With WrestleMania 43 set to take place in Saudi Arabia in April of 2027, that leaves a major void in the United States without a stadium show, and Tony Khan has hinted that AEW could potentially fill that role that WrestleMania and the WWE is leaving behind. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ringside Cinema. I am Money Mike, and today, well, can AEW fill that void that TKO and WWE has left in the United States by taking WrestleMania 43 to Saudi Arabia? That is the question that I want to ask today, because obviously Tony Khan has a unique opportunity here to kind of go after the fans that kind of feel like they're jaded for the fact that WrestleMania is going to Saudi Arabia. WrestleMania is not going to be taking place in North America, right? Obviously, for a lot of fans, whether it's wrestling or sports, we plan out our vacations and trips around sporting events, wrestling events. Like I've said before here on this channel, I've always wanted to go to London, and a couple years ago, AEW All In 2024 at Wembley Stadium, I was like, you know what? I'm going to use AEW All In 2024 as an excuse to go to London and for me to finally see London. When I went to SummerSlam in Detroit a couple years ago, I made a stop in Toronto because I've always wanted to go to Toronto, and it just so happened the Orioles were playing the Blue Jays the days before SummerSlam, so I went to the Orioles Blue Jays series in Toronto, visited Toronto, a great city. I hope that maybe Toronto will have the opportunity to host a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam in the future. So AEW has a chance to get those fans and bring them to a big stadium show in the United States and say, hey, we will give you the show that the WWE TKO is not going to give you. And I want to read the quote here from Tony Khan from the media scrum here at Double or Nothing. ONNJ reporter Pat Corsello began to ask Khan a question about the topic following Sunday's Double or Nothing pay-per-view. Next April, there's no domestic wrestling weekend in the United States, Corsello noted. Yet, Khan interjected unprompted. So does that mean an AEW Ring of Honor Mega Weekend is coming to the United States to fill that void left over by WrestleMania? I think it is potentially viable, and it's a very interesting thought. And we'll have to see what happens in the world landscape between now and then, but certainly it's a very interesting possibility. And Tony Khan isn't the only person in AEW who has brought this up, because even Will Ospreay has mentioned the idea of a AEW mega show where we bring in all these independent wrestling promotions and have a WrestleMania type of week for an AEW show. In an interview with Josh Martinez, this is what Will Ospreay had to say about an AEW mega weekend to fill the void left over by WrestleMania 43. It has crossed my mind, especially hearing WrestleMania would be going to Saudi Arabia. Why not? There are going to be a bunch of wrestling fans that usually flock to whatever city they are in, and it's something we should heavily consider. I hope our boss, Tony Khan, is considering it. I think the best thing we can do on that day that WrestleMania is in Saudi Arabia, make affordable tickets for one of the greatest wrestling shows ever and make it a whole week. Ring of Honor on Saturday, help out a bunch of indie promotions on Friday. We can definitely formulate such a great affordable time for wrestling fans and families. If we don't look at that, what's the point of doing it? I am fully on board now after reading that quote from Will Ospreay. I knew Ospreay had mentioned this in an interview, but I didn't read the full quote until now. But but that makes a whole lot of sense. Tony Khan, you need to do this. Uh, for those who have not been to a WrestleMania, a lot of the independent wrestling promotions out there, they take advantage of the fact that WrestleMania is in town. You know, they take advantage of that fact to get more exposure because there's so many wrestling fans coming from around the world to one place for WrestleMania, and it gives them a lot of exposure. So when Will Ospreay is talking about helping out independent wrestling promotions, I mean, this is perfect. Run a WrestleMania type of week, but for AEW, and I think this is the perfect solution for or the answer, perfect answer for perfect answer that AEW can give to WWE when it comes the perfect response to WrestleMania being in Saudi Arabia. And if if they can get together with a whole bunch of independent promotions, I think this would be huge. And I think too, I'm not necessarily saying that you need to move AEW All In to April of next year because obviously All In is the major stadium show for AEW, but I think coming up with a new pay-per-view, they just announced a new pay-per-view that's coming into Montreal in July. It is going to be AEW Redemption in July. So obviously they can come up with a new pay-per-view name that would fit the big stadium show atmosphere that a WrestleMania show would have. I agree with what Ospreay said when it comes to, hey, let's make the tickets affordable. What's the major complaint right now with the WWE? That the tickets aren't affordable. You're pricing out future generations of fans when it comes to wrestling shows. People are not going to be able to afford it. But AEW, they can go say, hey, we have affordable pricing. We'll let you bring your families to our show. Come enjoy our show and maybe get some new fans out of it. I see this as a win-win for AEW. I don't see how this wouldn't hurt them in any way. But I do think the question at that point would be, where would this show take place? And obviously, my answer would be like New Orleans, but I don't think AEW could sell out an NFL stadium. I know Tony Khan has talked about before. I think it was back around Revolution. He was asked about filling SoFi Stadium. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if AEW is ready to really sell out a NFL type of stadium. Now, I do think if you're going to run this show in April, I do think you would have to kind of maneuver around the Major League Baseball schedule a little bit, because maybe they can get into the baseball stadiums. And yeah, an NFL stadium would be great for AEW if they could ever get to that point where they could fill an NFL stadium for fans or with fans for a wrestling show. Like, I know some people say that might be unrealistic, but I mean, look at the attendance numbers for WrestleMania on each night. It's not that far fetched that with the right booking, the right stories, that AEW could essentially sell out an NFL stadium. But again, you do have to probably look at maybe a Major League Baseball stadium. More than likely, but where you would put this, I don't know. I think that would be the hard part, because where would it? Where in, like, what city, state could you put this show in the United States that is close enough to have that WrestleMania type of feel, where it's like everything is in one place. You can have Dynamite, Collision, just down the road or down the street in whatever arena. And then you have the stadium show, right? And obviously you would need like a convention center, stuff like that, to host like the other shows and the independent promotions, a fan fest type of thing. So obviously there's a lot that goes into this. But yeah, I think this is something that AEW should do. The fact that he quickly responded, yet when he was told there was no major wrestling show in April of next year, and Tony Khan's response was yet, that tells me that he's kind of secretly working on it behind the scenes. Now, I do think it's interesting that the WWE has yet to finalize the dates for WrestleMania 43. Now, I expect, if anything, we will get the formal final announcement at Night of Champions, which is taking place in Saudi Arabia next month, that these are the dates for WrestleMania 43. There's a lot of rumors that this could be a one-night show. There's a lot of rumors it could be in March. And obviously, with the time difference between America and Saudi Arabia, WrestleMania would be in the afternoon. That would free up the evening. So if AEW wanted to run the same day as WrestleMania, where WrestleMania in the afternoon, and then whatever AEW Stadium show at night, that's a strong possibility because of the time difference. But if I'm also thinking about this, maybe run it the week after or the week before. Hell, you run it the week before, and you get people talking about your show instead of WrestleMania. I fully agree with what Will Ospreay said. Like, let's do this. Let's make this a thing for next year. I don't know where, I don't know what venue, but let's do a big stadium show next year, Tony Khan. Fill that void left over by WrestleMania, and let's make this happen. All right? Would you guys travel to an AEW stadium show next year in place of WrestleMania? Let me know in the comments below, and where do you think this should take place? Drop all that in the comments below, and as always, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, as I do produce weekly wrestling content here on this channel. And I've been your host, Money Mike, and you've been watching Ringside Cinema.